Comfortably Zoned Radio Network presents Remembering Dynasty with Peter Golenbock.
Welcome to Peter Golenbock, Remembering Dynasty. How are you doing, Peter?
Doing fabulously. Just great. Thank you.
All right. We're just getting into the flow of things. This is our second attempt. Last week, I might add, was critically acclaimed. You're charming on the air. Appreciate your sounding. As Wayne said, was our guest. You could have been talking in the park to us, which is exactly what I'm trying to get. And we're just a couple of guys that talk ball. One happens to have written 9 number one bestsellers in the New York Times, and the other one went to Newtown High School. So, we, in addition to that, occasionally we will be having guests on the show, and we have one today. He is,
have a great one tonight.
Don't we? Dr. Bobby Brown. How are you, sir?
Fine, just okay, great.
Okay, if I could give you some sort of introduction, former Major League Baseball player, served in World War II, played with the Mick, and in the 1951 year, you were there when Mickey Gil McDougal came up. You played sandlot ball in San Francisco. You're the guy who went on to be a doctor. So my mother would be proud because I'm talking to a doctor. And it's not just baseball nonsense, Mom, up in heaven.
I don't think he was just a doctor. I'm pretty sure he was a surgeon.
No, he was a surgeon. He was a heart doctor, heart
not
surgeon.
A surgeon. I was a cardiologist.
Oh, okay. Well,
cardiologist. Yes.
We probably promoted you right there. Just truth be known. And you were later on the president of the American League. And so we got a good one today, right. Peter. You met Dr. Brown years ago, and I don't think Dr. Brown remembers, but you wrote the famous book, Dynasty, about the New York Yankees. And you want to talk about that a little bit, your experiences back then, Peter? Sure.
But Dr. Brown was kind enough to let me come over to his home in Dallas at the time. Beautiful, beautiful home. And we talked for about an hour about his playing Yankee with the Yankees, with DiMaggio, and with seeing Mickey Mantle come up. And he was the third baseman for several years, the late 40s, early 50s.
Right.
I'll never forget, in the middle of our conversation, his daughter walked into the room, and she was one of the most beautiful girls I ever saw.
Okay. You're a good scout, Peter Golenbock.
Yes, exactly right.
I can't wait to tell my daughters.
Well, maybe she could get to listen to this podcast. That would be terrific. And
so don't ask me questions. You ask Dr. Brown.
I'll ask Dr. Brown questions. I want to know, basically, from both of you. We know an awful lot about Billy Martin. You wrote a book on Billy, Mr. Golenbock. We know a lot about Casey. We don't know very much about the enigmatic George Weiss. And I'm hoping that Dr. Brown can give us some insight about his experiences with Mr. Weiss and what he was like, and if there's anything that we don't know, we as the public doesn't know about Mr. Weiss. Can you shed some light on it?
You asking me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, let me just say this. He had the philosophy, and I think probably he inherited from his predecessor in the Yankees, that he would have little correspondence or interchange with the players themselves in the clubhouse. rarely came to the clubhouse. He actually had Casey with the office that he could get access to the office without going through the clubhouse. So he felt that the clubhouse was the player's home, and he didn't want to defile it. And so we had very little, I think, as far as non-salary talks with each other. We would see him, of course, at the victory parties. If we had a problem, of course, we would go to his office and visit with him. He was a very astute manager in the office, and what he was very good at, he had some extremely good scouts that he kept for a long time, and he utilized them to the nth degree. We had two on the coast, Joe Devine and Bill Essick. We had Tom Greenwade, I think, in the Midwest. We had one in the Deep South. I'll think of his name before I'm through. And we had Paul Critchell on the East Coast.
Right.
And those scouts and the people that worked with them were excellent, and they kept the flow of players coming into the Yankees for I'm going to say 30 years at least. And he was at the helm. George Weiss was at the helm, directing all that in the office and doing it very quietly. He did not have much in the way of interchange with the press that I can recall, and he was a very close friend and booster for Casey Stengel. I think they had some companionship in the Eastern League when they both were at Harvard or at Hartford, not Harvard. And
Hartford, yeah, Hartford.
So I just think that that was pretty much him. He did not buddy up or did not sit around and chew the fat with ball players.
Okay. If I could add one thing to the legend of George Weiss is that although it started off very, very slowly, George Weiss basically built the 1969 Mets championship. He laid a lot of groundwork, both in hiring people like Whitey Herzog, and so he must have had something going for him.
He was very astute.
He was a team builder. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely. Branch Rickey was the one who invented the farm system. But once Rickey did that, Weiss did the same for the Yankees. I mean, Bobby, you were when you were in the minors, there must have been 14 or 15 minor league teams back in the late 40s. They had a huge farm system.
Well, we had
players.
We had two AAA teams, three actually. We had Newark, Kansas City,
Newark,
and
Kansas
they had a
City.
working agreement with Oakland. So they had three AAA clubs.
Right, that's right.
They had a couple. I think they had Beaumont in the Texas League, AA.
Right.
And then they had another Binghamton, I think, might have been either A or AA. So they had a
right.
They had 400 to 500 players under contract to the Yankees at the time I first came up in 1946.
I think the working agreement might have
knew
been
who to
with
keep and
Seals.
who to sell.
Pardon me?
Pardon me, sir?
I didn't hear
Pardon
what
me?
you said.
I didn't either, Peter.
Oh,
Peter.
What did I say?
Something about a cell.
What did I say? About which?
Did you say something about?
This is a funny system where
Yes, the three. It is funny. We're going to work it out.
Yeah, well, Billy Martin came out. That's where Billy Martin came out of, was Oakland. Casey came out of Oakland too.
Exactly.
Casey had been Billy Martin's manager in 47, 48, something like that. When he went up to the Yankees in 49, he told Billy, you stay back one more year in Oakland, and then we'll bring you up to the Yankees. And he did exactly that.
Right. I was referring to the working agreement that the Yankees had in those days. I think it was the San Francisco Seals, not the Oakland Oaks.
No, that's not correct. The Seals were an independent team.
No, that's not right.
They bought Joe DiMaggio from the Seals, but they had a definite arrangement with the Oakland team.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yes.
That's right.
But the Seals were an independent team, had their own farm system. Actually, they had Salt Lake and a couple other teams, Yakima maybe.
Right.
But they would sell players to all the teams, and of course the most famous one was when they sold Joe DiMaggio to the Yankees.
Right. Thank you for telling me about
something like 1936.
That's correct.
That's correct. We spoke briefly about your wartime experiences. How far along the baseball ladder were you when the war broke out?
Well, I wasn't on the ladder. I played my freshman year at Stanford. That was the spring of 43. I started Stanford in the fall of 42 in September. I turned 18 in October and registered for the draft, and I enlisted then in the Navy. And I was a pre-med student at Stanford, and I was called to active duty on July the 1st of 43. And I was put in uniform but sent to the campus at UCLA to continue with my pre-med work. The Navy gave us 5 semesters to do all our pre-med work, and then they were going to put us in the med school, which is what happened. They were afraid at the time. They didn't know how long the war was going to last, and therefore they didn't want to run out of doctors. So I had 1 calendar year, 3 semesters at UCLA in a Navy uniform, and then on December the 1st of 44, they sent me to Tulane Medical School in New Orleans, and still in uniform. And I think they treated us as sort of like midshipmen then, rather than just plain apprentice seamen. But I think they paid us like apprentice seamen. And I was in the Navy until the war ended. And the war ended in August or so of 45.
45, and that very next year, in 1946, you made your major league debut. And
but I signed a contract in January of 1946.
Right, and you got to play right away in the major leagues.
No, I was sent to Newark, and I played.
But you did play. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you did make your debut in 1946. And if I'm wrong about that,
no, I did that in September when Yogi and I and Vic Rashi and Frank Coleman were taken off the Newark team after we were eliminated from the Shaughnessy playoffs in the International League. And we all came in late September. It was around September the 20th. And Boston had clinched the pennant at that particular time. And so the Yankees, I guess, were in second place, but they were out of the pennant race. And Vic took his regular turn on the mound, and Yogi and I played almost every day, and Frank Coleman never got much of a shot. But the three of us, Vic Rashi and Yogi and myself, played every day almost with the Yankees, with Vic taking his pitching turn.
Would you tell me about the transition from Joe DiMaggio to Mickey Mantle and Casey Stengel, and how that went, and how the clubhouse was, and et cetera?
Clubhouse had no problems. I read about all these things about contention between Joe and Mickey, and if it existed, it was never evident in the clubhouse. And
it wasn't true.
Pardon me?
True. There was no contention between the two of them. There was no contention.
No, there really wasn't. And if there was, I never knew it.
It was not.
We had no trouble in the clubhouse ever. We had all good guys that were really liked to play with each other. Joe, I tell you, Joe told me that he was having some trouble hitting a slider on the outside of the plate, he thought, And I thought, and he felt that, and he didn't say it, that he felt this way, but that I think that played into the part when he retired at the end of the World Series in '51. And, you know, I think he hit a home run in '51, if I remember right, in the World Series against the Giants. But at any rate, Joe and Mickey, as far as I know, had no problems.
Okay. What was Casey like? Anything about Casey that we don't know about?
Well, I don't. Casey, I think that the players that we had that played for Joe McCarthy were always very loyal to Joe McCarthy in remembering him. And as far as I know, Casey got along with all the players on the team. I don't know of any feuds that he had. He and Woodling used to argue sometimes, but it was a spasmodic thing and it was temporary. But, Casey was Casey.
Right. Let's skip ahead a little bit, if you don't mind. What do you see in today's world that we haven't learned from those days, that society itself things are so radically different? We're so polarized. A Republican and a Democrat in the 50s were, a Keating Democrat, a Keating Republican was basically a Democrat. Today, we're so polarized. How did it get from those comparatively simple days to what we have going now? Can you shed some light on that? What do you see in the future, Dr. Brown?
Well, I can't tell you why we're so polarized. I think one of the big problems that they have is that both sides have dug in, and it's difficult for one side to give a little to get something from the other side that they want, and the other side doesn't get shut out. And I think that's been a big problem. And I'm talking about when Tip O'Neill and President Reagan had some type of understanding and could get things done, and people didn't criticize them, and they weren't castigated, and said that someone wasn't liberal enough or someone wasn't conservative enough. I think it's made, in the last decade or so, it's been more difficult for the two sides to get together and settle problems that we need to have settled.
Okay. Peter, would you like to add to that, if you would?
Well, this has been going on since the Ronald Reagan Republicans came in, where a fellow by the name of, I think his name was Atwater, decided that they were going to, run roughshod over everybody. You got to the point when Obama was elected president, the people in the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, said that their job now was to do the best that they possibly could to make sure that Obama accomplished nothing. So that's a large part of what's going on right now. Well, I don't know about treason, but it certainly was not allowing things to get done.
Well, they were shutting down the government.
That's politics. Can I ask Dr. Brown a question? Because I'm curious. I'm curious, when you had to go into negotiations for money with George Weiss, was that a difficult thing? Was he a tough negotiator?
Extremely so. And I was a little bit different because they knew that I wasn't dependent upon baseball forever. And so that I had a flexibility that I'm sure nobody else had, because they knew that I really didn't have to play, that I had something I could do.
I see.
And with staying in school and so forth. So they put up with a lot of stuff from me. First, after 1947, I never got to spring training. I got there a day or two before the season began and told them, here I am. And they said, when can you put it? And I said, today. And that's the way it went. And they always complained, not vigorously to me, but they knew that I had other problems, and they put up with it. And I guess I can mention this, that the president of Tulane in the early 2000s came here to Fort Worth and was curious. It was Scott Cowan from Cleveland, and he was connected with the school in Cleveland, and he became president of Tulane. And he asked me if I got into any kind of resentment from the other players because I was actually more educated than most of them. And I said, no, there's no resentment. They didn't bother anything of that. I said, it helps if you can hit.
Right.
I said, if you can hit, they put up with anything.
Right.
It helps if you can hit. That makes a big difference.
And
you hit 279 as a lifetime batting average, and it wasn't your number one priority in life by far. Did you look at it as almost like a day job?
No, I love to play, and I love being with the Yankees, and I really gave it my best shot, and I grew up loving to play. But I knew I just couldn't do that forever, and I had to do something, and I wanted to do something else. And then when I got into medicine, you know, the plate's full when you're in medicine. You don't have any time. I didn't have any time off. I tried to utilize every single minute, and especially in the winter when I was in school, you know, I had to try to get on in all my classes, and at the same time I had to stay in some kind of shape, because if I sat on my tail and did nothing, I was terrible in the spring, and I couldn't afford that because I didn't get spring training. So I had to work out. I worked out for 1 hour every day, mainly throwing, running, and swinging the bat and trying to get somebody to pitch to me. But that's what I did.
Brown.
And, of course, the Yankees they never complained to me openly. Now, I'm sure that bothered them, but at the same time, I remember they did a film and on Casey and asked him about me. He said, well, I can never get him to spring training. That's what he remembered about me, not whether I got some big hits in the series or did this or did that. He said, I couldn't get him to spring training.
That's incredible memories. What made you so driven all your life? What were your early upbringing? What brought that on?
Well, my folks were awfully good, and they insisted on working hard in school. But at the same time, my dad loved baseball and played good baseball growing up himself, and so he pitched to me until I was out of high school, and he taught me how to play, and it was a thing that it was normal to give maximum effort. And when I got with the Yankees, that's what they insisted upon, and that was all hat for me. I didn't have to do anything different. And so I just felt that but my dad, he insisted on doing well in school in the classroom, and at the same time doing well on the ball field, you know. I think he thought I ought to hit 500 and get all A's. That's what he was after.
Okay, that's an excellent answer. I want to ask you the same question, Peter. What drove you at an early age? I tried to touch on it, on our first show, trying to get an idea what it was like to be Peter Golenbock at an early age and be driven to achieve what you have achieved.
Well, I grew up in a household where I was expected to do not only my best, but to do very, very well. And I went to a high school, St. Luke's School in New Canaan, Connecticut, where the headmaster He owned the school, and he demanded excellence. And we did what he wanted him to do. He taught me grammar from the time I was in the 6th grade all through the 12th. We wrote essays a lot. He encouraged my writing like crazy. And I learned to be proficient in writing English from Dr. Kidd. And when I started in college, I went on to the Daily Dartmouth, where I very quickly became, the lead writer in the sports department. And it went from there. I mean, it was just something that not only did I love to do, but I was pretty good at it. So
you share a commonality
to the point where I was able to talk myself into getting a contract to write my first book, which was Dynasty, which was how I met Dr. Brown back in 1973.
Right.
Let me add this about myself. I've always felt that the most important class for me in undergraduate school, that's at Stanford and UCLA, was a 3-hour course I took in English composition. It was from a Dr. Booth in UCLA, and he essentially, the people in that, we had a 1,000-word theme every week, and you had to have it in every week and we, and I just remember that he taught me how to write, and I've used it all my life, and it's been absolutely invaluable to me.
Wow, that's wonderful.
I would
they don't say that.
Hello?
I think I talked over your question.
Yeah.
Do we have
I'm
time for a funny story about that?
It's terrible.
Please tell the story, Dr. Brown.
Okay. We had a class. We had the English composition class. The hour after lunch is 1 o'clock, as I recall. At noon, I didn't have a theme written for the week. I can't tell you. I was in the Navy at UCLA, and so I said I got to write something about that he knows nothing about. Dr. Booth was a little guy. Must have weighed 130 pounds. Had black frames on his glasses, and just a little guy. And I said, I'll write about Ted Williams, because I could read the sports sections about Ted, and he was chasing fire engines and all that stuff up in Boston and doing funny things. And so during the theme, I brought in an incident that happened with Ted and Bobo Newsom, and I could not remember if Bobo Newsom spelled an E at the end of his name or did not. And I said to myself, what the hell difference does it make? He's not going to know who Bobo Newsom is any more than he knows who's catching the first watermelon this year. So I added an E. Now I turned the theme in. I got the theme back the next week. I got an A on the theme, and through the E is a red mark with an SP above it. And I said to myself, how in the world did he know that Bobo Newsom didn't have an E at the end of his name? And I went up and I said, Dr. Booth, I appreciate the A. I said, how did you know that Bobo Newsom didn't have an E at the end of his name? He said the only Newsom that has an E at the end of his name is Skeeter Newsom, the utility infielder for the Detroit Tigers. And I just looked at him.
Fabulous.
And then he looked at me and kind of grinned and said, I grew up in the bleachers at Forbes Field.
Oh, nice.
That's fabulous.
Great.
That was a great lesson for me.
Hey.
Absolutely.
Our time is up. Dr. Brown, I'd like to thank you and hope you'll come back sometime. And Mr. Golenbock, these last 2 weeks have been a pleasure for me, and I hope you've enjoyed it as I have.
Always. To be with Dr.
Beautiful.
Brown was wonderful.
Thank you, Doctor. Again,
anytime.
Yes. Beautiful. I'd like to end the show by just saying to everybody out there, we're all going through the roller coaster of life. It is never totally smooth until the very, very end. So keep on keeping on and do the best you can. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and swing and strike.
Yes, and baseball and spring training is here. So we'll talk next week. Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot. Good night.
Bye. Take care. Bye.
Take care.